Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of Million Dollar Media. I am your host Max Kellerhalls and today I have a packed room of people. Let's start with our first guest.
Hi, I'm Josh Nicholson. I am the programming director for Wave Radio, which means that I'm technically everyone in this room's boss.
And to the left.
Hi, I'm Katie, and I host a show every Tuesday called Today in History.
And right next to her we have
Lilly, and my show's on Thursdays.
Awesome.
Oh, it's called...
Off to a great start.
My show's called Best
fun
Worst
episode.
Stories on Thursdays at 7:30.
Glad we have this room of people here today because the films we're going to be talking about today is a very specific genre of film. Or is it a genre? What would you consider it?
I would consider it somewhere between a genre and like a movement. But yeah, I would say there's like a... Did you bruise your toe? Doing alright, Max? You want to start over?
Sorry, Max.
No, let's keep going.
Yeah, so today we're talking about what I guess would be termed like extreme cinema.
Yeah, extreme cinema, or as I like to call it, movies that you probably shouldn't watch.
Yeah, I think we should, like, before we talk about or name drop any movies, we should be clear that, like, unless we specifically say you should watch a movie, don't watch any of these movies.
Yeah, I specifically chose these films because I think there are some extreme cinema movies that are worth watching and tell at least a story that's like, I don't know, it's not just for shock value. These films are just shock value.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't think they're well made. Well, they're well made in the fact that they are
But like in
uncomfortable.
like a way.
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you've listened to Lars von Trier talk ever, I think
Okay,
that, like,
yeah.
you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah,
there's not a
alright.
better term to describe
Yeah, you are totally right. Okay, well, screw it. Since we're talking about extreme cinema and you just brought up Lars von Trier, I'm going to bring up my first film, AntiChrist. So, Josh, do you know what this one's more about? Because I have it on my list, but I can't remember the plot of it, and I think that's a good reason.
I haven't watched this one, but I'm aware of what happens in it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's about a divorced couple, who go out into the woods, and then it turns into this, like, sort of weird, like, sexual torture thing.
Yeah.
We
You're going to
never
have that.
heard it was Eden Lake.
Well, it could also be that. I don't know what that movie is.
Oh, there's
What-
several movies on this list that... Okay.
Yeah. Antichrist might take the cake for the one scene, but...
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if we could describe it.
Well,
Let's
no.
just involve scissors.
It involves scissors, yeah.
And it's not fun.
Yeah, and this is the
We are
first...
not encouraging anybody to look it up.
Yeah, and this is the first thing that I want to talk about with Lars von Trier, which is, like, we didn't need to see that.
Nope.
And, like, he chooses to show it, and
Nope.
that's, like, kind of a common theme with him, is it's, like, you can imply things, or, like, if you want to do something meaningful, like, you don't have to show it on screen.
It's the Jaws method of filmmaking where sometimes not seeing the act or the monster or, hell, anything, it can be better than... Because our imaginations take over, and sometimes our imaginations come up with the most up thing. But just seeing it, one, it becomes gross and uncomfortable to watch.
Right.
Which is the point of the film. So that's why we're bringing these movies up, because these are films, if you possibly are scrolling through any streaming service and see this, we are strongly encouraging you probably not to watch it, or we're giving you a warning saying, hey, this is what this film is about, watch it at your own risk.
Yeah, and I want to talk about... So I don't know about anyone else in this room. I really like horror movies.
Oh,
for
I
the
do
most
too.
part. Yeah.
I love horror movies.
Yeah. And one of the things that frustrates me about movies that are like this kind of extreme movement, and it feels a little like a bastardization of the genre, because it's like, it's taking anything clever and subtle that like someone with talent could do, and making it like, we're gonna show you this thing. Blah, look at how gross this is.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well it's a little hack.
Like, instead of mentally making you scared, they physically show you the thing instead of just letting you imagine the worst things. Like,
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
scary.
It's kind of like in the same vein as Saw, but Saw is like Saw.
At least the first Saw movie is like good.
Yeah, the first Saw movie does exactly. It uses tricks of like, hey, they don't show everything. The later ones definitely show everything, but those are more like campy. Like you can understand that, hey, these aren't really like these are all awful people. In extreme cinema, this happens to regular, somewhat decent people,
Right.
and the torturer is a particularly gross, disgusting person. And okay, yeah,
I like to call it torture porn.
that's the that's
And
the idea.
I think
I just-
these all go well past what Saw does.
Oh yeah, they all go
yeah.
super well past what Saw does.
Okay, moving on to another Lars von Trier movie that I have on my list, The House That Jack Built.
Right. So this one was this after the Nazi thing?
Yes.
Okay.
So what this movie is about is a serial killer named Jack, who the movie basically is an anthology of many different killings that he does, and ultimately at the end, it really doesn't matter, and it's all like this big like, ha, audience, we got you to see all this f***ed up shit.
Right.
And my problem, I think you brought up earlier about like his particular way of just showing things, is that he has this really weird thing against women, and we're going to be seeing a lot of that throughout this episode. And I think that's why it's important to have women here to talk about like why this is all wrong. But it is like there's a scene where he practically like
Is this the thing with the Sharpie?
no, I'm talking about where he I'm talking about the scene where he basically yeah, the experiment here tonight in the audience is they have no idea what these movies are about.
Yeah.
So their reactions are priceless.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is probably one of the most uncomfortable things. It's a shot that's in the back seat of the car,
Right.
looking up at the front, and you just see this, and you're just like, oh, this is Jesus. But I don't know much about that Sharpie scene.
Yeah, he like, to be blunt, in a way that doesn't like go into too much detail, he like is seducing a woman and circles part of her in Sharpie before cutting it off. I don't know, like, again, it's like he has this thing against women, which makes sense because he also has a thing against women in real life.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yeah, also in this particular film, the one interesting thing about it is that the main character throughout the movie has like an inner dialogue with like this old man, which is actually pretty interesting because it's like it kind of gets into the character psyche. I like that. That's an interesting idea. I just think ultimately what the film ends up being is just one big farce, and it's just not.
well, but it's weird because
Yeah.
American Psycho is that.
Oh yeah.
But American Psycho was made by a woman, and thus that kind of recontextualizes a lot of the stuff in that movie.
Yeah.
It was a book written by a guy.
Yeah,
And
which
then
was turned into a film by a woman.
Yeah, and it's like a really interesting, like that's not extreme cinema, that's just like a really good satire horror movie that like makes fun of like
It makes fun of men. The point of the movie is making fun of
men, and
which is why it's
great.
really funny to see all these like dweeby dudes on the internet who are
yeah.
like fully sort of embracing what was a woman parodying like gross masculinity.
Yeah. That's a good film, actually. If you haven't seen American Psycho, I highly recommend watching it.
Yeah, especially with the knowledge that it was like a female
directed by a
film.
female. And like, oh yeah.
Can I talk about a movie?
Okay, yeah.
Well, because I assume we're going to talk about Gaspar Noé at some point.
All right. Yeah, we're jumping ahead. Let's just go for it.
I mean, these aren't in any particular order, are they?
No, they all suck.
Okay. Well, so I'm assuming...
They're all horrible, horrible movies.
Did you put Love on your list?
Gaspar Noé film that I have on my list, in no particular order. It's a film called Irreversible.
Yeah.
I'll say this about the film. I always give, even the worst films have something in them that I may enjoy. I do like the structure of this movie. It's an interesting way to tell a film. Basically telling your third act, second act, and then first act, and scenes are just out of order.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting way to tell a film.
Right.
However,
this
film, once you figure out the
draw,
and the reason why certain things happen at the beginning of the movie here is probably the most uncomfortable 9-minute scene ever. And I'm not going to say what it's about, but it is a very graphic, one-shot, one-take scene that actually involves another really respected actress, Monica Bellucci.
Right.
It's just... it's one of the most uncomfortable scenes that has ever been depicted in film, in my opinion.
Wait, what movie is this?
This is a movie called Irreversible. Should we, like, for context, so you guys know what we're talking about?
What you're talking about.
Yeah.
Should we,
cut
like,
this out.
should we, like, bleep this or whatever?
Alright, so we're going to tell them what it's about, but you guys are not going to hear. I highly recommend that you guys do not look it up.
Yeah, don't.
Don't look it up. Please don't.
Yeah.
Like in a streetcar named Desire.
Yeah, like in a streetcar named Desire. I mean, we can be back in at this point.
We're back.
Yeah.
We just told them what it's about. Without telling us what it is, can you give us your reactions?
Yeah, no, that's some shit. And I'd like to say personally, I'm really tired of like having movies be their drawing point is violence against women.
Yeah.
Because it's this really big thing that people will be like, oh my gosh, did you see? Because they did this. And it's always against a freaking woman. As if this isn't like something that women actually go through all the time. And it's always a freaking man writing these stories.
It is, yeah.
Like, it's never ever a woman writing the story.
There is a film that did come out from a female perspective. It was called, just simply titled, Revenge. It's another, I think it's another French film, but she's basically taking the, this horrible subgenre and basically telling it from a more female's perspective, where it's just like, whereas most of the times when it's a man telling the stories, it's about what did she do wrong to get herself in the situation, but really it's actually interesting seeing it from a female's perspective, where it's just like, that none of that matters. This should not have happened at all.
And it's weird with Irreversible specifically. I'm like butchering that. I speak French. I don't know why I'm butchering that. But like the thing about it that I think is really telling is the fact that this happens to Monica Bellucci, but it's her two friends who are hunting down the guy the whole time.
Where in the
it's
film,
like her two male friends.
Yeah, where in the film I'm talking about, it's the
Yeah.
female actually getting revenge.
Right.
Oh, kind of like in A Promising Young Woman, right?
Yeah.
Just this one is a little bit more like, it's the more like Quentin Tarantino violence.
It's kind of weird. It's I find it more strange that there's this weird fixation, especially with male directors, about this female-driven revenge plot that always happens, and I don't know why that's always the story that they want to tell, when there's so many other like women-led stories that they could tell. Like, I don't know. I don't personally get revenge every single time something bad happens to me. I don't know, do you?
Yeah. No. Oh,
No.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, for sure.
absolutely I do.
Every time.
But no, it feels like a shortcut to like writing like a strong female character. It's just
Yeah,
like
but they've so exaggerated. It's a villainization.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the one time, like, I respect movies like Atomic Blonde, where it's just
That
like,
was also what I was thinking of. That's a
it's
great
just
movie.
like, she's just a badass.
Yeah, she's
gets
just
the
cool
job.
as
Yeah, she's just cool. Doesn't need to have any like tragic backstory or anything like that. She just does her thing.
Right.
But okay, I think we need to get back on track of like.
That's
very
no,
off track.
no. But I don't actually think that it was that off track, because I do think what Tarantino does is like a diet brand of that same extreme kind of.
You know what it is? It's exploitation.
Yeah, it is exploitation. It's Tarantino does it in a different way, but that doesn't make it any less of what's happening. And it's like, I'll point to another Gaspar Noé film that is called Carn. It's a short film that he made. And there is a scene in it where, and this isn't like that bad in the grand scheme of things, but I think it proves my point, where the main character is supposed to be like butchering meat. And they used an actual dead horse. They like, and it's like, but like you didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we're
Like-
also going to be talking, like, a lot of the films on this list also kind of have this theme of, like, animal cruelty.
Right.
Where, like, let's go into the next film. I don't think I have it on my list, but I definitely want to talk about it. It's probably the one that started this whole genre. It's a film called Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah.
So the film crew does a bunch of evil things, and the one thing that's this movie's infamous for is that they actually take a live turtle and gut it on camera.
Oh my god,
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah.
When was this made?
70s.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
That's
1980,
still
yeah.
70.
Oh.
That has to be illegal.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
it totally was.
And
Yeah.
they
well, so they
Yeah.
arrested the director.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because they thought he impaled a woman.
Uh-huh. This movie's infamous for having a shot of... Careful, everybody. Trigger warning. For having a shot of a woman basically being impaled, kind of like Dracula style, where Vlad the Impaler style would basically...
Oh,
it's
yeah.
From,
Yeah.
what is it?
Yeah, just like
Groin.
Rear to head.
Yeah.
It's like popped out. But if you read how they did it, she's basically sitting on like a bike pad.
Yeah, and then just like holding wood in her mouth.
But the shot, because of how the movie's filmed, like in that like Blair Witch found footage style, everybody was just like, what?
And what's important is that he told that actress that she wasn't allowed to be in public for a year, so like the government actually thought she was dead.
Yep.
That's so unnecessary. Like,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's the point. Is all of these movies
Yeah,
are
that's
unnecessary.
the-
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what makes it extreme, is because they take a thing that's taboo or uncomfortable and they just twist it until like they get
Yeah.
some react. These filmmakers are all about the reaction of like, how can I get the audience to hate my guts?
Yeah,
Right.
it hasn't been a good reaction for any one of these.
Yeah, it's the handing out barf bags at the premiere thing.
Yeah.
Which is what these directors always love to do, because they're
Yeah.
like, oh, my movie's so extreme, you'll throw up. And no one ever does, because
No.
that's not how movies work.
No. Even though I have.
Yeah.
I don't know,
I've
Lily
had
might.
once.
What is that supposed to mean?
I have once, but I'll save that for a different day.
Yeah.
But yeah, this film is notorious for starting the extreme cinema genre and also like the cannibal Amazon genre. Also, if you want to go into like the idea of like the stereotyping and like racism of like just these,
Yeah.
I can't. It's not African. It's
No,
more of an
it's
Amazon.
it's like Central America.
Central America. So yeah, but still, it's like these people all painted red.
Yeah.
Like
It's pretty bad. And then and you can argue that there's that, and then it gets really worse when you get to shit like Indiana Jones, which came out a little later.
See, it's like kind
Damn
of
it!
a comedy.
I like Indiana Jones, but
I
not
like
for that
Indiana
reason.
Jones, too.
Yeah, but like, you can like things and still admit they have problems.
Oh, hell
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the thing.
I mean, as a kid, I loved Short Round, and I still kind of love Short Round, but a bit racist, yes.
Yeah.
But I am glad that actor is back in doing movies.
Yeah.
But just that's another theme throughout these movies is that you also see a lot of really harsh stereotypes. You see a lot of really harsh stereotypes against minorities, people from different countries.
Yeah.
Like, if pretty much if you're not white in some of these directors' voices, you're seeing it lesser. And I'm
Well,
not saying that. Go on.
I would just say that, like, from the sounds of it, I think the thing that a lot of these movies benefit from is being from a time when this was considered, air quotes, okay. So,
Yeah.
like, they benefit from the stereotypes because it also gives the audience something to be afraid of, even
Yes.
though it's not
Yes,
warranted
exactly.
fear.
Some of the films are recent too.
Yeah, like everything Gaspar Noé has made has been like in the 2000s.
Well, that's even worse.
Yeah.
And I think The House that Jack Built, which was
Well, it was like 2017 or whatever.
2017.
Does that one have, like, racism?
No, it just has like a kid getting shot.
Oh, that's true, that's true, that's true.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
I will going on like the stereotyping of certain groups of people. There is this film called Eden Lake. So what this film is about is a couple goes to a lake for their honeymoon, and they slowly get tormented/tortured by this group of hooligans. Now, this is a particular genre of horror movie called hoodie horror, which only exists in London, or like the British area, because what it is, it's the fear of lower class people messing with upper class people. Now, I'll say this in the film. None of the people are black or Hispanic or anything like that. They're all like white trash. The idea of white trash in London. So they all have that like Cockney accent and kind of like this really like, fuck y'all.
That was really bad.
That was pretty terrible, man.
That was not Cockney at all either.
Kind of sounded like, what's his name from Mary Poppins? Mary Poppins!
Now that's an
Dyke.
extreme film.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it still goes on the idea of, like, the lower class attacking and doing something against, like, quote-unquote people of upper proper class. And the weird thing is, this was a film that stars Michael Fassbender before, like, Magneto, before Inglourious Basterds. So it's really weird to see him in, like, this really, like, like, he gets fucked up in this movie. It's a really brutal film because it's just these, like, hooligans, like these teenage hooligans with hoods just messing with this couple. And the reason why I have it on this list is because it's a genre film that I think is really horrible.
Yeah. No,
and
for
this
sure.
is the film that kind of, like, goes to the extreme on that angle. Of just, like, it's just...
It's classist for sure.
Yeah.
It's really uncomfortable to describe, and again, I highly recommend you don't watch this film because it's just uncomfortable, and it still, again, goes to the idea of, like, being cruel towards women.
Well, and then the ending is just awful.
Have you seen it or heard of it?
Yeah. Oh, I know literally everything that happens in this movie, and I've chosen not to watch it because I can't stand the ending. Like, I think it's horrendous.
It is. It's a really uncomfortable, like, ending.
Mm-hmm.
Screw it. Basically, what happens at the end is, you think that the girl's gonna get away. Like, the guy's, like, long gone. He's, like, all his wounds are infected. It's just gross. And what happens is she gets away, but she crashes her car, and she goes to, like, this little house trailer. And you find out that where she ended up was the family of the hooligans that some of them killed to escape, and basically they run her down into a bathroom and just, like, beat the crap out of her until she dies. And that's the way the movie ends.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Like,
It's horrible.
Like, obviously not every movie has to have a happy ending,
No.
but it's just so unnecessarily extra
It's for
violent.
shock.
Yeah.
It's for shock, and that's not...
Well, and it's interesting because, you know, you talk about, like, these movies don't have to have a happy ending. And
No.
it brings to mind a movie that I thought was very mediocre, but had, like, a great ending, which was this movie called The Strangers.
Is that the one with
Oh,
the bag-headed people?
Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
they wear, like, masks.
Yeah.
And it was...
Oh, yeah.
It was really not that good. Aside from
Oh.
Glenn Howerton being in it, which was very funny because
Yes.
it's Glenn Howerton.
Yeah. From Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
From Always Sunny.
I really liked it.
I
I thought
was
it was fine.
it was it was okay, but then there's that ending scene where, like, the girl, like, the woman survives, and she's, like, been, like, tied up, right? Like, she's been put through all this, and she, like, has this moment where she's just like, why to these kidnappers, and it's literally I'm pretty sure it's the only line that they say in the movie
Yeah.
is because you were home.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's this, like, there was no significance to it, which in and of itself is way scarier than the idea of, like, this all happening. Is this all happened for no reason? There was no, like, grand conspiracy behind
Yeah.
it.
Like, it could have been literally anyone else, but it was them.
Right.
That idea is generally horrifying.
Right.
I think it gives you the idea, like, it could have been you. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think certain horror films pull it off so good. Like certain ghost movies, certain slasher movies, like the ending of the first Halloween movie where it just shows, like, all the houses and it's just like empty. I like it.
I don't like Halloween. It's so boring.
Okay.
That is, you know what? That is fair. That's
fair.
That's not, like, an unfair assessment.
No, it's totally fair.
I also think it's a little boring. I just think that it's, like, interesting. I don't know. It's interesting because it spawned a genre, and it's kind of interesting to look back at.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And also Jamie Lee. I love Jamie Lee
Yeah,
Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis is
The
great.
concept of the original Scream Queen. Like,
Yeah.
Which we could go on Scream Queens forever, but let's save that for, like, a strictly horror-based episode. So we're just gonna move on to another one, which I do think this movie is, but this next movie is called The Girl Next Door, which is based off a true case. I forgot the name of it. Maybe.
True crime? Just like the show that we air on Wave Radio?
Yes.
Soon?
I might actually
Hopefully.
have to talk with Carly about this one because this is a case that is messed up. So what the movie is about
Wait,
is...
so this is based on a story that actually happened?
Yes. So what it's... Can I explain what it's about?
Yes.
So what the movie is about the movie follows a young boy, and his neighbor just recently adopted her, I think like stepdaughters or something like that, or like it's some weird familiar thing where she now has control over these kids, and basically the film follows this older daughter get abused in so many different ways that I do not want to describe because, again, it's based off a true case.
I believe Katie just looked it up.
No, because I think that I talked about the case in my show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so.
So yes, Katie did find the case that she was going to talk about. I can't say that this might be the one film on this list that I can't say is entirely bad because it doesn't show a lot of things, but it shows enough to get a point across about, no, this poor girl went through a lot of things, and it's not for the faint of heart, but the film still has a point of showing, like, because we follow one of the boys who who's just in total, like, what are you guys doing? And, like, he actually cares for this poor girl. It still has a bit of, like, a human heart to it. And since you're following this boy, you understand that, no, this isn't all right. So, of all the films here, it does take the idea of, like, a man wrote this and doesn't do, like, he doesn't save the girl.
Yeah.
At most, he probably just calls the police and tells them what happens. And they're too late.
Yeah, this is ultimately one of those, like, because obviously when I talk about history on my show, there's going to be violent things, but this is just one of those ones where I was like, this is too graphic, and I don't think that it needs to be discussed again in the way that I needed to discuss it.
Yeah, so that's why I guess I want to talk about this film also, is that since it's based off a true story, how do you feel about movies taking subjects like this and making them into films?
I'll say this, that I think when done well and when done properly and with respect to the people who it's impacted, they can be really informal and really important in order to prevent or make aware things like this happening in people's lives. But they can also be really, unfortunately, graphic and done more for shock value rather than actually helping the people or giving justice to the names. Because, like, for this one, the girl impacted is dead, and she will never be able to. What? Did I say the wrong word, bro?
You said informal.
You did say informal.
Okay, well, informational. I can be really informational. So, like, obviously the girl impacted can't say, hey, that offends me, the way that you wrote it. But it's like, if they can write it thinking this was a young girl who didn't deserve this, and think about that in moments like that, that's important. But there's other movies, like, that are about Sharon Tate. And Sharon Tate's family is still around. And still telling people, do not write this story, we do not want this. And directors still ignore that and pretend like it's not happening.
Having seen the film, I personally think that, again, it does show some stuff. It just shows it in not a, like, shock value. You don't see, like, everything. You get hints at stuff, but you're shown stuff that is uncomfortable because you want to get in the headspace of someone that was actually there. And one of the things that the film also does is that it flashes forward to showing the young boy as a grown man, and he's still like, I wish I could have done more to like said something sooner. So it does have this. It talks about, like, the idea of see something, say something, and I do think that in that way, it's important to, like, not just sugarcoat what really happened. And, but I think of all the films on this list, this has taste in that we are being respectful for what happened. They also, one of the things that I respect that they do is they don't actually say them. They don't use the real names.
Right. So it's inspired by the true story, but the girl,
they respect her name.
Yeah. Because when I say girl, like, I mean girl. She was young.
She was,
like, this is not
very young.
a grown woman whose story is being tainted. Like, this is a little girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, younger than me and Katie.
Yeah.
It's and that's the reason why I have it on this list is because it's the one film on this list that first time I watched it, my soul was just extracted from my body, and I felt like a husk, because I was just like, why are we living?
Well,
it's
and
just
it's like
uncomfortable.
If I might like share an opinion on this, like I'm gonna sound pretentious, so let me like preface this.
Oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to get pretentious.
So I think a lot about Kurt Vonnegut, who is one of my favorite authors, and there's a bit he for those who don't know anything about Kurt Vonnegut, he was a soldier in World War II. And he was trapped in a warehouse in Dresden, a city in Germany, which was firebombed by the Allies for basically no reason. And he told his story about that. And there's in a book called Slaughterhouse-Five, which I think is incredible.
I think I've heard of that. Yeah.
It's an incredible read. It's one of the most important books ever written about war, I think.
Oh. Okay.
And the reason for that is that there is this one particular segment where he talks about a battle where pretty much everyone died. And he was like, I don't have commentary. There's nothing intelligent to say about this, because the point is that everyone is dead. The point is that everyone who was here doesn't think anymore.
Oh, wow.
And that's always what I think of with these kinds of things, is like, what kind of... It's a little self-centered. It's a little like, I am an artist and I'm going to extract intelligence and like this out of something that is pointless and horrible.
I will agree. But choosing to have the center of the movie be the young boy...
Well, yes, but like, do you take my point where it's like...
Oh, yeah, I totally
are
do.
these the stories that, as artists, are like, is it trying to insert intelligence and, like, commentary into a story that was something pointlessly horrible happening to someone for basically no reason?
It's kind of like how people are still uncomfy with the whole Diary of Anne Frank thing. Because Anne Frank isn't a martyr, she's just a girl that lived and died in a Holocaust. Like, she's not some martyr or representation of a cause. And her diary was meant for her and her alone. And while it might be important that we read it, it's still very important to know when you read it that in a lot of ways you shouldn't be. And I think this movie could be one of those things where it's like, it might be important that you know this happened, but in a lot of ways you should not be watching this movie.
Right.
I come from a stance that any artist or filmmaker can tell any story that they want. That being said, the reaction that people have are still their reaction to what the movie you made. Right. So, like, if you're going to make a movie telling the perspective of someone that you're not, everyone is in their complete right to tell you why that's not a good idea.
Right.
You can still do it, just know that you're going to probably go through a lot of problems.
Right, but I don't think the question is whether or not anyone can do this, but whether or not they should.
That's a good question.
I will say that from the sounds of it, this movie is very different from some of the other ones we've been talking to, where, like, the violence against, and I'm not even going to say woman, against this girl is very differently used than it is in other movies.
Yeah.
Where it's still uncomfortable, it's just true to what happened, and not sugarcoating it, and being like, because there's another adaptation of what happened with much more famous actors, including Elliot Page.
Was that Hard Candy?
No. Hard Candy's something completely different.
Yeah.
This is a movie where Elliot Page was playing this girl, and they basically do what I say they shouldn't have done. They sugarcoat a lot of what happened, and they actually focus on the girl's perspective instead of just another guy's perspective. So it goes to more of your point of like, well, why are we extracting thoughts from people that have passed?
Right. It's like, it's what is there intelligent to say?
Yeah.
Like, what commentary or like...
Because the girl didn't write any memoir or anything about what happened. It's all just reports from, like, a police dossier.
It's called An American Crime.
That's it.
Okay, but I think it's kind of weird. Like, okay, obviously I haven't seen the movie, but, like, that it would be centered around the boy. Like,
yeah.
I get that that's an artistic choice, and it could be interesting, but, like, the fact that that this happened to the girl and he was just a witness, like, but he still, like, gets the entire story, and also I feel like he didn't do something until later, and he kind of gets, like, see what happened?
So they do kind of explain it where it's a peer pressure scenario where all the other boys in town are some of them are in on it, and they're like,
Yeah.
if you tell, we're gonna beat the crap out of you. We're gonna go like he has a sister, and they're like they threaten him pretty much. So it's this thing where it's just like he's in a no-win situation. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't. I can't remember if he does anything, but he doesn't do anything to her.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, he's the one person that like finds a way to sneak in and give her water.
But, like, I just feel like it's kind of, like, obviously he was better than the rest of them in
Yeah.
the situation, but it's like a glorification for him.
I
It's
agree.
kinda
And
like-
he wasn't, like, her savior or anything.
It's like if they made a movie about the very recent Turpin family case, but then wrote it from the perspective of like a neighbor.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
where
And-
it's they weren't impacted by it directly, they just know that it happened.
Right.
And his impact is significantly less horrific than what actually happened to her.
Mm-hmm.
I just appreciate it that they try to do it from that perspective, and that it's
Sounds
not.
interesting.
Right.
It,
And again,
I highly recommend you don't watch it, but if you do, just know what you're getting into, because it's a very uncomfortable film, and that. But I do think it is a well-made film to be uncomfortable.
Right. And again, I think that what it all comes down to is, again, it's like they're choosing to tell the story of this boy, right? And that is an artist who saw this and was like, I'm going to interpret this to make a point out of it.
Mhm.
And again, that's what it comes down to, is it's like interpreting this situation where pointless cruelty happened and reinterpreting events so that it was meaningful, so that this can mean something. And it's like, is that right to do? Is that an appropriate way to handle things?
True.
I think it's all about the perspective of the person with the story, because unfortunately in a lot of ways we live in a society where violence like this becomes so normal that for a lot of people trying to find meaning in it, even though there's none, is the only way they can cope with it. And for, I don't know who this director is or who the...
Yeah, I don't know either. Look it up. It's called The Girl Next Door.
I have the page open.
Because
It's,
that's...
I'm gonna go off on a limb and say it's not. And I'm not trying to make any statement there. I'm just gonna.
I'd say that because it's from the boy's perspective.
Yeah,
it's
no,
not.
I would
It's
definitely
definitely
guess
not.
it's not.
It is Gregory M. Wilson.
But I would say
Can
that,
I
like,
go off on a. Can I see it just to read?
well,
It's not movies you've heard of. It's like Clown or whatever. It's like not all of them even have posters.
nice.
No. I want to see if it is the movie, The Girl Next Door. if
It
that
is.
one.
Is it this movie?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's it.
Oh, well, because there were two Girl Next Doors, but one of them was about, like, a sorority sister.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Um,
not it.
But, like, I think there is something to be said about being so desensitized to this kind of violence that we find meaning in it even when there is none. And while I'm not saying that's good, I think it's a very active coping mechanism that a lot of people have in
Yeah.
today's society.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, if it could get you to cope through it,
Right. But I mean, is that what's happening here? Is that this
Yeah.
this man writing coping mechanisms for like other people?
oh,
But it could also be a reactionary coping mechanism for something about him that we don't know about.
because it also goes to the idea of, like, this girl was just a normal girl who was put into this horrible situation. And it does go into the idea of, like, this could happen, and that, like, yeah, like, it's not more about, like, here's how you work through this. It's more like it happened, and this will always affect him. Like, at the end of the movie, like, it's this, like, 50-year-old man just kind of, like, he's just, like, down on his luck. He's, like, really upset at himself, and he's just looking at a pond that he used to hang out with this girl by, and it's just, like, it's just, you just feel the emptiness out of it. It's not a movie that's trying to make a point more than it's trying to make a feeling of, like, this can happen to anybody, and this is just, like, the feeling of, like, you could have done something, but you were either too late, or you're too scared, or it's just one of those films, again, just rips your soul out and just says, yeah, you're not going to be living with this for a bit.
Yeah.
Alright, I guess, because there's a couple other movies on this list. I do want to talk about one more. It's a movie called Grotesque. and it kind of delves into the more J-horror, Japanese horror side of extreme cinema, where they really took this genre, like a lot of Japanese films, like a lot of Japanese horror films really take this genre, the extreme cinema genre, to the next T. Even to a film series called Guinea Pig.
Right. Well, and so it's interesting that you say this because I've actually like studied for school like Japanese horror movies. I did a big project on it in high school.
Did you talk about extreme cinema? Like
I did not, and that's kind of the point that I want to make, which is that I feel like it's a little unfair to like holistically call J-horror like going farther with this.
Well,
because
I'll say this. What I mean by that, it's a culture shock.
Sure.
Where
What's up, Katie?
I have a question and I want this to be bleeped out. Is this the one where essentially this man is like looking for an actress?
Oh, you're
That's
thinking
Audition. I actually almost threw up after I watched that.
Okay,
That is
because I know
actually, I didn't put that on my list because I think that's a
Decent movie.
That's a decent movie.
The bad shit only really happens at the end.
Yeah,
because like
that's why I
doesn't
didn't
she
put
like
it
make
on.
him like drink his own piss or something like that?
No, she like puts needles under his nails.
Yeah.
Oh, cool,
Yeah.
cute. Yeah, okay.
Like saws off his
Then
leg.
never
or
mind.
something.
I literally
Yeah.
have no clue what this movie's about. Continue.
So this one is actually about a guy, about a doctor kidnaps a couple. Like, this is their first date, and he kidnaps them and basically puts them through a test to see how far they would go to like for each other. And that's the whole movie. It's just like, what's the next torture method next? And I'm not going to describe any of it because it is.
So it's just Saw.
It's practically Saw, but just more. Like a lot of them have to deal with like sexual like problems too.
Oh hell no! I'm good, thanks.
So like, so you're like, oh, there's one thing that I'll describe it real quick to the audience, and this will definitely. I'll just cut back in their reaction after I say what they have.
Okay.
So,
dude, is it bad that I wish I?
No, that rules.
Okay.
I need to leave.
Katie's
Get out of here.
She's like, I'm like, damn, that's unfortunate for him.
Katie's like Rip Bozo.
Okay. I will say, like,
I need to get out of here.
it's like, it's nice hearing about graphic shit against men when you're only ever hearing about graphic shit against women.
Every single thing we talked about tonight pretty much was graphic against women.
But like, and like, I'm sure visually that is not fun to watch. But
It's
like,
not. No.
hearing you describe it is.
No, it's funny as hell. Yeah.
Okay,
Fine.
I kind of had to. I didn't want it to be like, and then this happens to him. I wanted to like kind of get a little levity to it, where I
Yeah.
literally like counted down to it.
Yeah.
But now, like, it's uncomfortable, and like, I don't want to say what happens to the woman.
Oh my,
Oh, good
what?
Lord. What happens to her? No!
Still not worse than AntiChrist. You know what?
Oh my god. No, because here's the.
No, because what could happen in AntiChrist that's worse than that?
Am I allowed to say? Should I?
No.
Katie, you can plug your ears if you want.
That happens to real people.
It does, but it's like
does.
It's like they show it like fully on screen.
Oh
Like,
my
even
god.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I mean, I threatened to. Time.
Didn't you? Yeah. You're bleeding.
Oh yeah, I know.
Okay. Okay.
This is the most chaotic episode.
Well,
If anyone
okay.
has a Band-Aid, I'll take one.
Whenever
is a
you
bag of
describe
chips.
things like this, like, it's just funny to hear, but
Oh,
like
yeah.
I'm sure watching it, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, that's why I had you guys here, because I'm like, if this was just, again, if this was us two, this would be like, so.
It would. Yeah, this would be the least fun episode of any show on
Well,
radio.
okay, but like the thing is
That's
that,
why
like,
$1 Million Media is the best show.
with the things that you told me that happened to the men, it's funny because that can't happen to me. Which no, like it sounds bad, but I mean,
No, I get it.
No,
I get
when
it.
I
actually-
hear it,
yeah, I
I'm like,
understand.
I'm
I get
like,
it.
that is so like specialized towards men. But when you describe the thing that happened to the women, only one of those things can happen to me. Whereas like one of the other things could happen to y'all.
That's fair.
Yeah, you know what? That's legit.
You know
So
what?
it's like
I
it's-
never heard that perspective before, and I kind
So
of
like
appreciate
hearing
that.
it out loud, it's just a little funny because it's like I'm safe, but y'all, I don't know.
You know, maybe I'm equal opportunity uncomfortable because anytime anything happens to anyone on screen, I'm like, ooh.
You're like, oh, I don't even have that, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, because I'm like imagining like that must not be fun. But no, like the reason why I bring up that it was specifically a Japanese one is because there's something that happens at the very end that is ridiculous. So she basically, her head gets cut off,
Sure.
and her head flies across the room and bites the doctor and then falls on the ground. What the hell? Like, and it's shown in like that, like, like this whole movie is supposed to be taken somewhat seriously, and like that's uncomfortable. Then all of a sudden,
It's just silly as hell.
this silly thing happens, and it just kind of ruins the whole thing. But I don't know if that's like a cultural thing, if that's just a director thing.
That's a director thing.
Okay, because I watch a lot of Japanese stuff, and it might just be that, again, cultural differences. There's just a lot of stuff that just happens.
Well, I mean, you can say that you like watch a lot of Japanese stuff,
Exactly,
but like,
but I'm not Japanese. Like, yeah,
no, well, no, it's not even that. It's like if someone who's not from America, from any country, right?
Oh,
Like even
yeah.
if someone somewhere as similar as like the UK or like France or Italy or whatever, if they were like, I watch a lot of American movies. Like I watched like The Human Centipede, and I was like, wow, that was pretty weird and indicative of American culture. It's like
in so many ways.
but like you see what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
it's hard to approximate other cultures.
I know. I'm only saying it. I wish we had. Oh man, I need to get my Japanese people in on this show to talk about like the differences, because like there are clear differences between the cinema types.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm saying. I just wanted to bring it up because there is a particular Japanese subgenre within extreme cinema.
For sure. But I mean,
That-
a lot of countries...
Maybe I'm not.
A lot of countries have that, though.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like-
Again, we were talking about French.
We were talking about French. I mean, Russia has a lot of that.
Russia.
Yeah, I mean, Come and
Sure.
See is like...
So, Spanish films. Oh yeah, they got like Cannibal Holocaust was particularly more Spanish.
Yeah, it was
film.
Spanish.
So yeah, yeah.
Veronica? I've never actually seen it.
Is that the demon one?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Which is supposedly like one of the scariest movies ever, but from what I've heard of it, it's really not.
But see, it's weird because... And if I might end this, because we're getting close to the end of our recording time.
Yeah, I have
Um,
to edit a bunch out.
Yeah. But if I might end this on like a note, it's interesting to think about like the scariest horror movies ever made, because now with like the internet, you're getting these weird like homemade horror things that are like a million times scarier
Which
than anything
kind
I've
of are indicative of these extreme cinema movies, where it's just these low budget, like uncomfortable as hell movies. But why do we need them when we have, again, videos like you're talking about, where the one with the mannequins, where it's just like
the like where she's singing.
that one that's uncomfortable as hell to watch.
Yeah, but I'm thinking more of like the Mandela Catalog, which I don't know if any of you are into that.
I haven't seen much of it, but it does sound pretty scary.
It's terrifying. Like, as someone who watches a lot of horror movies, it's maybe the scariest thing I've ever watched.
Okay,
And
I'm not watching that.
well, but it's because nothing happens in it. Like, there's no gore, there's no, like, punch. It's just all really deeply unsettling and tense without any, like, bah!
Yeah,
And
there's nothing cheap about it.
No, but yeah, it's not that it's not cheap, it's that it's all people talking and, like, still images. And it's like...
That.
But it like gives me the chills. Like the first episode of it, like the first thing that they did was they took an old like cartoon and just like kind of messed with it in small ways.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh god, yeah, that freaks me out.
It's like really unsettling.
Like
and
I can at least hear about all this stuff.
Yeah.
And be like, all right, but that stuff I cannot watch it.
Right, and that's what I mean when I say that I feel like extreme cinema is kind of a bygone thing when we have these things that are a million times more artistic, as well as being these like really deeply uncomfortable things that don't have to like show us this horrible like violence against women and violence against animals and children, right? Where you can tell these stories without having to like exploit this real life tragedy, which I think is...
Yeah, I think it's just the metamorphosis of becoming from what the 70s exploitation films were, where it's just like, all right, let's exploit this particular genre, like blaxploitation, which is, in my opinion, my favorite kind of exploitation.
You can have a favorite exploitation.
Well, Shaft. Shaft. I love Shaft.
Sure.
I like that style of like the 70s jazz where it's black filmmakers telling black stories. I like that stuff. That's what it is, blaxploitation. Because exploitation can... Alright, I'll say this. Exploitation films can be good. Particularly my favorite are the 70s blaxploitation films like Shaft and, what is it? Oh, Dolomite is probably one of my favorite bad movies, but I love it. And I also love I just love the style because of like the jazz, the black filmmakers telling stories and during that time. And also it has this really cool indie film to it. Also, I am a particular fan of Blackula, even though I understand there's huge problems with that movie. I still think the idea is pretty cool. So yeah. Alright. I think we're gonna end this episode off on that note where it's just like, yes, this is probably the most uncomfortable for me episode.
I had fun.
I had fun. But just before we leave, let's everybody give a roll call of what you all do and what maybe shows you have. So let's start with, how about we start with Lily this time?
Okay, I'm Lily. My show is Best Worst Stories, Thursdays, 7:30 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Really said self-promo.
You're about to self-promo.
He did it on my
Yeah.
show. My name's Katie. I do Today in History every Tuesday from 3:30 to 4:30.
I'm... What, Max?
I think the show just got invaded by Megan Thee Stallion.
I'm having fun. Fuck you. Anyways, I'm Josh Nicholson. I am the Wave Radio programming director. I don't have a show to promote, so I'm gonna say come to the Wave meetings.
Mm-hmm.
We meet every other Thursday in
Tower.
the Tower lobby. So come hang out with us if you have like a show idea or something.
We've got some cool people.
We do have some cool people like me and Max and Lily and Katie.
Wow, you really said me last.
I was
Whatever.
going around in a circle.
Thanks, boss.
Whatever.
Alright, and I'll end it off by saying I was your host, Max Cahalls. This was $1 Million Media. If you're listening to this on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and subscribe. And have a nice day. Don't watch any of these films that we talked about.
I'll be watching all of them. No, I'm kidding.
You're
Hey, some of them sound good. I'd watch The Girl Next Door. I would too. Let's watch it tonight.
No.
No.